Vamos a empezar oficialmente. We will start officially this webinar. Y bueno, mi nombre es Arlen Solodkin y es un honor para mí darles la bienvenida en nombre del Instituto de Bienestar Integral, organización que fundé y tengo el privilegio de dirigir a nombre de la Sociedad Mexicana de Psicología Positiva, que actualmente presido y que Margarita lo hizo por varios años anteriormente. También queremos darles la bienvenida en nombre del Centro de Estudios de Bienestar del ITAM, que es dirigido por mi querida colega y amiga Margarita Tarragona. Este encuentro nace en un momento profundamente humano. Hace apenas unos meses dimos vida al primer Hope Circuit con la intención de activar la esperanza a través de la acción. Una esperanza real, cultivada desde el aprecio, la conexión y la decisión diaria y consciente de hacer el bien. Hoy nos reunimos para celebrar el lanzamiento del libro de María, El intercambio generoso, un libro que nos recuerda que la belleza, la bondad y la excelencia no solo son adornos de la vida, sino anclas y puertas. Anclas que nos sostienen cuando todo se mueve y puertas que nos permiten entrar a mundos maravillosos donde se encuentra lo que más importa. La esperanza no es algo pasivo, es una práctica vital que se cultiva al reconocer lo que ya funciona, al honrar lo valioso y al atrevernos con pequeños actos a construir juntos una realidad más luminosa. Tengo la alegría de presentar a Margarita Tarragona, terapeuta, coach, profesora, directora del Centro ITAM de Estudios del Bienestar, expresidenta de la Sociedad Mexicana de Psicología Positiva y autora del libro Tu Mejor Tú, una gran referente en psicología narrativa, en psicología positiva y en el bienestar aplicado. Y tanto Margarita como yo tenemos el gran privilegio de presentar a la doctora María Sirois, una mujer cuya voz es medicina. Es autora de Every Day Counts, Cada día cuenta, A Short Course in Happiness After Loss, un pequeño curso de felicidad para enfrentar la pérdida, y su nuevo libro que celebramos hoy, Generous Exchange, el intercambio generoso, donde nos muestra cómo la atención, la belleza, la bondad y la excelencia puede restaurarnos a nosotros y al mundo. Como dice Tal Ben Shahar, María es una sanadora de personas y comunidades. Y cuando vuelve su atención a sanar nuestra aldea global, me siento más optimista sobre lo que viene. Este libro es un regalo para ti y para nuestro futuro compartido. Así que bueno, vamos a comenzar esta sesión haciéndole algunas preguntas a María. Al final, como mencioné, abriremos un espacio para preguntas y respuestas donde nos va a encantar escuchar sus voces y sus reflexiones. Gracias nuevamente por estar aquí. Esperamos que esta conversación sea un espacio de pausa, conexión y sentido que nos inspire a cada uno a seguir cultivando lo cotidiano, esa esperanza que tanto necesitamos y que tanto podemos ofrecer. Welcome, María. Bienvenida, Margarita.
Thank you so much, Arlen and Margarita and everyone.
Great. Wow, well, maybe I will open the conversation. Maria, I finished your book last night. I got it 2 days ago in the mail, and it's such a beautiful read, and it goes by really fast. So I have my appreciation of it, but I would love to hear from you. What's at the heart of this book? What is it that you want to transmit to your readers, and how did you come to writing this book?
Thank you, Margarita. I came to writing this book out of a moment of great difficulty when after the first year of the pandemic, I found myself at a loss. I felt very burned out and discouraged and frightened about the future. And I'm just curious, does anyone feel a little frightened about the future now, or worried, or yes? And I learned during that time, Margarita, that in the moments when I was paying attention to beauty, natural beauty, or to the beauty of human beings, our kindness to each other, our generosity, our care for each other, that I felt better. And I began to collect those moments in the same way that a thirsty person would collect water, every single day. And it inspired me to consider, how might we provide this same sort of nourishment to others? So at its heart, this book is about providing nourishment for the soul, the mind, the heart, hope, a sense of hope in difficult times, and practices, pathways forward for us to learn to savor the beauty that's available in front of us and become filled from it.
You mentioned practices, and in the book you say that you yourself started experimenting with some practices, journaling, and also, can you tell us more about those practices?
So it turns out knowing something is not the same it's not the same thing as having that thing change you. So if we want to be happier, we actually have to practice those things that elevate happiness. And in this case, if we want to feel more hopeful about the future of human beings, but also the future of the planet, we have to actually practice those things that bring us to a place of hope. So in the book, I have a whole section on practice. And for me, some of the practices that I've engaged in include a daily texting practice with a friend for a month on something beautiful I saw that day. And maybe we could practice this right now. If you could put in the chat one thing that any one of you find beautiful in the world right now, just one thing that you find beautiful right now. Let's see if we can get a sampling.
Yo no voy a sacar motor.
So I see that flowers in my garden, trees, the smile of people, jacarandas, which are, Mexico is filled with these beautiful flowers that have your favorite color, Maria.
Yes.
Purple, beautiful color.
And then someone wrote my husband's eyes, right? There's
how romantic. That's beautiful.
Yeah, there's the general, which is flowers or sunshine or birds in the sky. And then the very specific, right? The ocean and my husband's eyes, the hug of my grandchild, and the smell of spring here in the United States. And so this is what we notice, Margarita, when we ask about beauty, is that it is both sort of expansive and general, but also very, very, very specific. And when we do so, when we notice on a daily basis, even if it's just a matter of for 10 seconds noticing and then sending a friend a text, for a moment, we are elevated. For a moment, we are moved beyond our suffering, our pain, and we become connected to something larger than oneself. So that's one example of a practice, a tiny practice, one noticing, share it as the text. On the other side of the coin, I have practices in which I invite people to journal about stories of goodness. So this is a second pathway of beauty, moral beauty, we call it, or goodness. And to turn the lens of their attention towards stories of the best of us in humanity. And it turns out, if you look for stories of human beings being good to each other or good to the planet, not only will you find them, but you will begin to feel a hope again that all is not lost.
Arlen, do you want to continue?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to ask you, Maria, these practices are really powerful. I remember during COVID, I started taking pictures of flowers every day. And that's something new that I started to do. And it really saved me during those moments to find beauty around me. But I wanted to ask you, can this help people who are suffering from depression or anxiety?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that we know to be true about experiences of negative emotions like anxiety or fear or anger or jealousy or bitterness is that they tend to create a negative spiral within oneself. So, we have a difficult thought, we have a difficult emotion, and that tends to lead to behavior that is limiting and narrowing. And we have a hard time seeing what is beautiful in the world. When we actually train our eyes to notice the good, either through story or vision or shared conversation, we create a place of respite in the brain where the negative emotions, the impact of our negative emotions and thoughts is softened. So for someone like myself who tends to be an anxious person, it's not that I'm not anxious anymore. I am, but I pivot more quickly to a calmer place. When the anxiety hits, it has a softer impact. It won't derail me for the entire day. It may derail me for some of the morning. And in addition to this, I begin to develop pathways in the brain that are actually stronger, that more often pivot toward the positive. And this is what we need in order to experience hope. We don't need a brain that is 1,000% positive or happy all the time. That, first of all, that's not possible. What we need is a brain that knows what to do in the difficult moments to provide sustenance for ourselves. And beauty provides sustenance. Does that make sense, Arlene?
Absolute sense to me. And I think those pathways begin to select the beauty that is out there, and that increases the opportunities for us to find the miraculous in the common, which I think it's part of the intention of those practices.
And one of the things I've learned that was a surprise to me as I was writing the book, that, for those of you who are artists and writers, you begin doing something creative and then it kind of goes its own way. It has its own voice, yes? And one of the things I realized is that because I have trained myself to elevate this strength of character, right? This is a character strength, our ability to appreciate beauty and goodness and excellence. Because I've trained myself to see it, and because I've seen it and savored it, I can no longer only see the world as bad. I can no longer only see human beings as evil or cruel or ignorant. I simply cannot ignore the goodness in the world. And so the other way in which these practices cultivate hope is that they provide a more balanced view of the biggest pictures possible. Yes, times are difficult, and people are miraculously generous to each other everywhere. Yes, there is war, and there are also people working very hard toward peace. Yes, we are losing species, and every single person on this call knows someone who's working hard on behalf of the environment. So we develop not only a brain that pivots more easily to a positive place, we develop a perspective that helps us hold the whole.
May I ask something, Arlene?
Sure,
One
sure.
of my favorite topics in positive psychology is the study of character strengths. And you've mentioned the character strength of appreciation of beauty and excellence. And I would love to hear more about it and the three aspects of this strength that you develop in the book. There beauty, kindness, and
Oh, excellence.
excellence, right? Sorry.
Okay, so every single human being has character strengths, and we have a wonderful body of research centered from an organization called VIA, VIA, that has helped us understand the 24 top strengths of humanity across race, age, gender, geography, socioeconomic status, and history. Aristotle, for example, wrote about beauty. Dostoevsky wrote about beauty. Immanuel Kant wrote about beauty. John O'Donohue, the Irish poet, wrote about beauty. And what we have come to understand is that there is a strength available to all of us called appreciation of beauty and excellence. And that strength has three pathways of beauty. The first is attending to and appreciating natural beauty, the natural world. The second is the path of moral beauty, which we also call goodness. And the third path is the beauty of excellence, of accomplishment, of achievement, but also excellence of character, right? So I'm curious if you could throw in the chat now, if you think of someone who you admire deeply in the world for their character, what quality of character do you admire about that person? So bring to mind someone who is important to you, who you admire and respect, and what is the character quality that you admire? So we have kindness, we have serenity, generosity, honesty, a sense of justice. What is Valencia, Arlene?
Valor or courage.
Courage, humor, trustworthiness, right? And we need all of these in human beings, right? We need all of this. Now, not every human being can have every positive quality, but we need the whole of it in order for our species and our planet to do well. When we pay attention to either natural beauty, moral beauty, or the beauty of excellence, now it brings tremendous benefit to us. The research is very clear. It makes us calmer, happier. We feel connected to others and connected to life in general, sometimes connected to spirit or the divine. It provides us an energy of vitality, so we feel both calmer and energized. It often inspires us. Stories of goodness inspire us to become better human beings. There is a person in my neighborhood, I wrote about this in the book, Margarita, who's just a wonderful human being. She has her own children. She adopted children. She's adopted dogs. She teaches children with difficult abilities in school systems. She's generous. She bakes for everybody in the neighborhood. Compared to her, my partner and I feel like terrible people. You know, I haven't adopted anybody. I haven't rescued anybody. I don't bake for everybody in the community. Like I only bake for my friends, but seeing her excellence of character reminds me that that excellence is possible, number one. And number two, inspires me to bring my own character qualities to the next level. Her highest quality might be generosity. My highest quality might be love. Why not take her lesson and elevate my love, my quality? Does that make sense?
Yes, and I wanted to share that I think that that is something that you do incredibly well in your book. The way you share those stories, and you are such a wonderful storyteller, inspired me to think about my own stories as well. And I think by doing that, you are starting up that ever evolving upward spiral that we know is so important, especially in moments of despair and in moments where darkness seems to be taking over either one's life or the world in general.
Yeah. And maybe Arlene, we can take this back to the group. I'm going to ask you to take a risk now, everyone, and to, if you feel comfortable, to place in the chat one quality that is your quality that you know is a quality of goodness, something beautiful that you know you bring to the world. So love and humor. Yeah, more humor in the room. kindness, thoughtfulness, uh, generosity, entrega. What is entrega?
Being giving to
Giving.
others.
Giving. Amabilidad is,
Kindness.
yeah, being amiable. My partner is known for being amiable. Trust, enthusiasm. My son is all about being zesty and enthusiastic. One of his gifts, an active learner, hope. Right. So just as we need them in others, we need them in ourselves. And one of the practice sections that the Margarita, this is a section that surprised me when I was writing the practice section. All of a sudden I thought, well, we can look for beauty, we can collect stories, we can share information, we can take photographs like Arlen practiced, but we can also stand still and become more of our own beauty. We could choose to become more of a pillar of goodness or kindness or appreciation or joy. I see alegria from Cecilia, joy, spirituality, from Maria Cristina, right? We can become more of that. Take what is already good and amplify it, because Lord knows we need all of these qualities amplified.
Absolutely. And in Mexico and Latin America, and you've been here,
Yeah.
we love arts and music and dance and paintings and songs. So we like to celebrate. I think that's why, in some ways, there is this Latin American paradox, right? In the World Happiness Report. So yeah, can you've talked about being kind, and you talked about beauty, but could you talk more about the appreciation of excellence and what benefits those excellence?
Yes. So Arlen, you took me to a performance in Mexico City of traditional folk dance and music. Do you remember? In
Ballet
a
Of course.
folclórico.
in a beautiful hall, a
Y
beautiful
Bellas
center
Artes, ¿no?
Yeah, en
right?
Bellas Artes, el baile folclórico, sí.
With the beautiful windows, right?
Yes.
Yes. Now, that kind of craftsmanship, either the dancing or the singing or the windows, that doesn't happen like this. It requires attention and practice and making mistakes and learning again and trying something new and then being willing to learn from others. From the term we use is to apprentice ourselves to the masters, right? And apprentice ourselves to the guitar teacher or the singer or the glass artist, right? And in the presence of excellence, like for me, especially the Michelangelo, the David, right? In the presence of excellence, we have a choice. We can be inspired and decide that, oh, they're so much better. I could never be like that. I will just stay small. Or we can allow that inspiration to motivate us. I will never be Michelangelo. But one of my gifts to the world is my capacity to tell a story or share a story. So could I use that same Michelangelo-like presence and focus and dedication in my own way? So that the world not only has someone like a Michelangelo, they also have someone who is a storyteller, or like Margarita, someone who is a brilliant therapist, or like Arlen, who can build community efforts unlike anybody I have ever seen in this world, like pull together a community for a good cause with such grace, such grace. And again, to remember, we need all of us in this together. We need all of us in this together. One of the, and I would like to feel not alone in the world. So if this is true for you, could you put a yes or a C in the chat? Does anybody here also like science fiction? Fantasy, science fiction? Yes, thank you. I feel less alone. Now, every science fiction story, every fantasy story has one thing in common, two things in common. Number one, there is always an ethical dilemma. Do I save one person and risk the world, or do I save the world and risk the one person? Do I stay grounded in my values of kindness to others, or do I kill the evil person and let it be okay that I've become a murderer and let go of my value of kindness, right? There's always an ethical dilemma. And then there is always also one other element. There is always a moment when someone in those stories realizes the following: the heroes of time past are gone. The future is still unwritten. We cannot afford to wait for them. We are the heroes of this time. And I think if we take any lesson from any of the fantasy literature available to us in any form, it is this: the reminder that in any one moment, we, the ordinary people, are the heroes of the time. And one of the ways we can step up into that without putting a kind of superhuman burden on ourselves is to live into our goodness, to live into our qualities of beauty, and to respect and validate and elevate those in others. That is how we are heroic. That is how we push against the darkness.
Beautiful. Wow, I know that you really wanted to interact with the people who are here, Maria, and we love that too. So this might be a good point to open the conversation to other people's questions and comments. If you could please raise your hand. Si pueden subir la mano, sobre todo la manita digital, se ve más fácilmente. If you have questions, si tienen preguntas, comentarios para María, si pueden levantar la mano, María va a ir diciendo sus nombres. Maria, you will call on people when they raise their hand, right? Okay. So, entonces,
So,
si tienen preguntas,
Or
comentarios.
Margarita, they could put a
Yeah.
question in the chat. And
Oh, put a question in the chat, okay. O bien lo pueden poner en el chat. ¿Qué prefieren? A ver, todavía no. Ah, mira, Joad has her hand up, I'm sorry.
Hi.
May she go ahead, Maria?
Yeah. Can you hear
yes,
me?
yes.
yes, I can.
Hi, thank you, Arlen and Margarita, and thank you, Maria. I've read books of yours before, and they're absolutely influential and amazing. I don't have much of a question, but it was more a comment that sparked from what you were talking about, your character strengths and how you are encouraging us to raise our awareness on what those character strengths are and then to use them, right? And how that creates that ripple effect in communities. And that reminds me of, I do not remember where I read this, but it stayed with me where it said something such as, it is our responsibility once you know that you have a gift, and I'll put instead of the word gift, I'll say strength here, to give that gift out to others and not keep it to yourself. And so a little bit of what you were talking kind of got my wheels running of like, how beautiful is it if the majority of the people or most or in the perfect world, everybody would understand that commitment of how beautiful it is to give your response, to feel the responsibility of giving your gift to others, and how that immediately creates then that sense of, it just elevates and fosters that sense of happiness, right? Because you're giving yourself to others, creating that sense of happiness for others, others are receiving it, and then that's happening again and again and again, and it just like bursts. And so again, not a question, but just a thought that you made me kind of develop. I do not know if I said that clearly.
You did, Joad. And if I could just amplify that for a moment. So you're referring to a kind of upward positive spiral that researchers in the field of positive psychology have identified, that if we activate our strengths, not only do we feel better, but it benefits others, then they are encouraged to activate their strengths. And along the way of that strength-based journey, we are encouraged, we feel more resilient, we are often happier. So good things happen within the person and between the person and others, right? The title of my book is called The Generous Exchange, and it is the same kind of idea that you're talking about, that if we pay attention to beauty outside and inside, and we savor it, and then we share it, we create the same positive upward spiral. So if I spend 30 days texting one person, here's a beautiful thing I saw today. Or if I spend 12 days journaling about a story of goodness I heard that day. Or if there's a practice section for teachers and parents in the book. If I activate conversations about beauty around the kitchen table or in the classroom, and that becomes part of the language of the classroom or of the home, then I am participating in an exchange with the world, not just my family. Because as I instill in my children or my friends or my coworkers this recognition that beauty and goodness are present all the time and we can draw nourishment from them, we are naturally triggered to not only bring more beauty alive, not just notice it, but bring it alive. And we are naturally triggered to actually become kinder human beings. One of the profound benefits of appreciation of beauty and excellence is that it softens the heart.
Mm.
The second benefit, and this is relatively new research, is that it is the character strength that is most likely to inspire pro-environmental behavior. It is the strength that will inspire people to take care of the plants and the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees and the oceans and so on. So that is the exchange I am hoping for with this work. Thank you for that question, Joad. Claudia, I see that your hand is raised.
Claudia Baeza.
Hola, hola María, hola Arlen, hola Margarita, ¿puedo preguntar en español?
Sí.
Porque mi
Claro.
inglés es muy malo, ¿sí?
No,
Ok.
perfecto. María está,
Muchas gracias.
puede habilitar.
Yo vivo, María, yo vivo en León, Guanajuato, ¿no? El estado de Guanajuato es uno de los más violentos de México. Entonces, soy maestra de la Ibero León en presencial y maestra de la Ibero Ciudad de México a distancia. Pero mi pregunta iba enfocada, que creo que de alguna forma la respondiste ahorita que yo participaba, pero mi pregunta era, en este mundo lleno de violencia, a nosotros nos toca escuchar todos los días cuestiones de carreteras cerradas, coches explotados, ¿no? Balazos, muertes, y cercanas y no tan cercanas y lejanas. Hace poco desaparecieron a una persona que conocía muy cercanamente. Entonces, en todo esto, o sea, en toda esta dinámica que tenemos las personas que habitamos México, pero sobre todo que habitamos en este momento Guanajuato, ¿no? O ciudades de Guanajuato, ¿cómo puedo ayudar a mis alumnos a cultivar esta esperanza? O sea, porque en las clases, pues, trato de motivarlos, de decirles que las cosas estarán bien, que nos toca a todos, digamos, y a todas hacer algo, pero la verdad es que es muy claro en chicos de 20 años ver la desesperanza. O sea, justo ayer que platicábamos para cerrar el semestre, me decían, pero ¿por qué eres tan entusiasta si las cosas no están bien? O sea, si todos los días hay que ver que alguien desapareció, que alguien robaron, que alguien secuestraron, ¿no? Que algo malo sucedió, ¿no? Entonces, pues me gustaría saber tu opinión al respecto, ¿no? O sea, cómo hacerle, no digo que no lo hagamos, pero cómo hacerle ante esta realidad.
Yes, thank you for
Gracias a
your
ti.
question. And I am so sorry for the experiences of violence and cruelty in your area. We do not want to lie to our students. They know that things are not good. What we want to do is balance that information with the data that is also true. So you could, for example, depending on the age of the student, ask them to come to class with one story of kindness or generosity or goodness that they know from their own life. And then the next week, ask them to come to class with a story of goodness or kindness or generosity that they have heard about. And then the third week, ask them for a story of goodness or kindness that they admire in some important figure. It could be a football player. It could be a politician. It could be a business person. Yeah. And so to gently, not all the time, but once a week, gently have them gather their own evidence of goodness in humanity. And once we begin to do this, once we begin to gather the data, so in my world, one assignment I gave students recently was to bring stories of progress that have been made in the environment, positive steps for the world, the plants, animals, oceans, it didn't matter where, just something to do with the natural world. Now, does that change the fact that in many aspects, climate change is profoundly difficult? No. But does it give them hope that they are not alone in wanting to improve the world or to participate in improving? Yes. Your students will continue to see violence in your area, I'm so sorry to say, but we want to balance that with the data. Does this help, Claudia? Yeah.
Sí, mucho. Muchas gracias, María.
There's a question in the chat, unless somebody else has their hand raised. Maria, there's a question that says, how not to confuse realistic optimism with fantasy. En español, ¿cómo no confundir el optimismo realista con la fantasía, con el optimismo fantasioso? Pregunta María de Lourdes en el chat.
Realistic optimism is grounded in reality. It's grounded in the evidence of what we actually see or hear or experience ourselves. Fantasy is hope, fantastical hope. It's Disney optimism, and it's not grounded in reality. What's interesting is if you start to practice attending and savoring beauty, you will see that there is far more evidence of the good than you even had imagined. Margarita, there was a study that Barbara Fredrickson and her team did where they had people guess how many positive moments they would experience in a day. Do you remember this study, Arlene?
No, I don't know.
And people would say things like, oh, in a day, maybe 3 positive moments, maybe 1, maybe 7, maybe 10. They would come up with a number. And then Dr. Fredrickson's research assistant had them record, just mark, chick, 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 positive moments throughout the day for 2 weeks. And it didn't matter what the number was. If I thought I only had 3 a day, I was always surprised that there were actually more. If I thought there were 10 a day, there were actually more. There's far more out there than we realize. We just have to learn to tune our attention in this direction. Does that mean that every single day I am filled with stories and images and moments of goodness and kindness and beauty and generosity? God, no. What it does mean is that more often when they happen, I actually can see them and savor them and therefore bring a sense of nourishment from them. I can't pretend they don't exist any longer. So that protects us from that fantasy delusion that everything is terrible. And it reminds us that there is actual reality, that much is good in the world. And that will keep us out of the fantasy idea anyway.
There's another question in the chat, but I also want you to hear people in the meeting. But here it is from Alejandra. She says she works with organizations. I would like to know if organizations are going through difficult times with many people laid off. How can we maintain hope among the employees who remain? Pregunta Alejandra, en las organizaciones, cuando las organizaciones están pasando por dificultades y están corriendo a mucha gente, ¿cómo se puede mantener la esperanza entre los empleados que continúan en la empresa?
Yes. It's very difficult when the people around you are being sent away. And because that not only there is a sadness there, but there then is a fear that you too will lose your job. Both things are happening often at the same time. But one of the ways we can cultivate a grounded, realistic hope in an organization is to become better at noticing excellence out loud, meaning I notice the gift of this person or the skill of that person or their valuable contribution, and I name it out loud. I don't just appreciate it inside myself, I celebrate it with my team so that you begin to develop a culture in your team of noticing excellence, of naming it and celebrating it. We know from the research from Teresa Amabile at Harvard that teams that celebrate progress, positive gain, do better. They're more resilient, more engaged, more satisfied. And we know from the positive psychology research that teams, so teams at work, but also families and communities, for example, we are happier, more satisfied, and more resilient when we notice the best within each of us. So this attention to that third pathway of beauty, the attention to excellence, is really a beautiful technique to bring to work. Mary Pat, yes.
Hola, hola, ¿qué tal? Arlen, ¿cómo estás?
Hola,
Margarita,
Maripaz.
qué gusto verlas. Voy a hablar también en español porque mi inglés no es muy fluido. Y bueno, en ese mismo orden de ideas de la pregunta anterior, sin duda, el segundo tema que más importa, dicho por las estadísticas del INEGI, el segundo tema que más importa a los mexicanos y a las mexicanas es el tema económico. Y evidentemente el tema del emprendimiento es un tema que ha crecido enormemente. Yo creo que siempre ha existido, pero en los últimos años, bueno, con estos despidos y esta incertidumbre y precariedad que hay en el mercado laboral, pues el emprendimiento es una esperanza precisamente. Entonces, ¿cómo fomentar la esperanza en la comunidad emprendedora cuando están en un momento crítico en donde por una parte están las habilidades poco desarrolladas y por otra parte el desafío es alto? Entonces el tema de la incertidumbre y la ansiedad, bueno, pues es muy alta, ¿no? Entonces, ¿qué sugieres en esos casos, María? Gracias.
So I think the answer that I just gave, to notice each other's excellence and skills and gifts, is one answer. A second answer is to look for the entrepreneurs who have been successful under difficult circumstances, to read the literature, the Fortune magazine, business magazines, to read the literature of stories of success. For example, in America, do you know of a product called Spanx?
Yes.
Yes.
Spence.
Sí. I don't need it, but I know about it.
Can you tell Mary Pat Paz what it is?
¿Conocen los punks, que son esas como fajas modernas? Básicamente son fajas, pero se llaman, what is the name? Like figure enhancers, I don't know they don't call them.
You wear it under
sí,
your clothes,
right.
it keeps everything.
Sí, in place.
Es una común faja.
Exacto.
Okay. The founder of that company was a woman who grew up in a family where during dinner at night, the father would say to his children, "What did you try today? And how did you fail?" And the children learned that in their family, it was perfectly okay to fail. It was not okay to not try. And so the children grew up experimenting, little entrepreneurs. They tried this business and that business and this business. And when the founder of Spanx was a young woman starting a new business, she was selling in Florida, which is a very hot climate, southern Florida. She was selling something door to door. She would go to people's doors. And she noticed that she didn't want to wear underwear where you could see the lines under her skirt or her trousers. So she thought it looked better to wear pantyhose. But pantyhose made her too hot. So then she tried to wear pantyhose, but cut the bottom off, but that would roll up. So she tried 3 or 4 different approaches until she came up with the idea of this body hugging feature so that she didn't have any panty lines. It took her 4 or 5 years to experiment enough to come up with the right product. She is an example here in our country of entrepreneurship, of failing, learning, failing, learning, failing, learning. So to read the literature, to look for examples like this. Arlen is a gorgeous example. She has her own organization. She's an entrepreneur. She's done a number of things, not only in positive psychology, but for the community around. To spend time with Arlen saying what worked, how did you do it? What happened when there wasn't enough money coming in, for example. Right, Arlen?
Yes, and not only what worked, but what didn't work.
Right. So this is how we keep hope alive. Real life examples that are further ahead of us. They have navigated some of the challenges we are facing, and they can remind us that it is possible. Plus, we gather wisdom from them. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I wanted to say something, Maria, in case while somebody else asks, but what you chose to do in moments of difficulty, which was writing a book where you could highlight those beautiful stories and pay attention to the beauty around us, it's also an act of generosity. And I think in those small moments or big moments, because when one is desperate, a small action can mean it feels like a huge step. Writing a book, of course, is a huge step.
Yes.
But those choices that we make every single moment in our lives to offer something good to the world, to create a new idea, to give it a try, to find beauty, to share beautiful stories, that is just breathtaking, Maria. And I think you are a great example of that generosity in action, I would say.
Thank you. Thank you, Arlen. I will try and take that in, Arlen. And there is a beautiful quote in the book from a poet, Naomi Shahib Nye. I believe it comes from her, where she says, sometimes I'm not going to remember it perfectly, but it essentially says this: sometimes taking action allows us to have sorrow not be the only thing living in the house. In my house, growing up, if we were to name the most common emotion, it was sorrow. A lot of depression in my family growing up. Other people have houses where there is a lot of anger or a lot of distance, isolation. Some families are happy. Yes, some families are happy. Many are not. And if we want to have in our home more than fear, more than anxiety, more than sorrow, more than anger, more than jealousy, more than isolation and loneliness, then we need to make choices. this book is a generous offering, Arlene, and I wanted it to be a generous offering, and it was at the same time a generosity to myself, because I made a decision at the age of 29 to not have sorrow be the only thing I felt, and to not have worry be the only way I woke up and went to sleep at night. And to have that become true, I had to take action. I couldn't just wish for myself to be different, right? We can't just wish for happiness or wish for serenity or wish for kindness. We have to find our way into those practices and then become more of that ourselves.
Thank you.
That is so important, Maria. And I just want to echo what you're saying, because we've heard from Marty Seligman that he is still and was more a pessimist than an optimist. And he developed a whole theory on optimism to help himself. And Tal Ben-Shahar talks about how he wasn't happy. He was filled with like self-demands, and he decided to study happiness to overcome his unhappiness. In my case, I must say, there were many years where I also suffered from depression because I felt helpless in front of the world situation. My situation in my family, with ups and downs, it was okay, but I was too sensitive to the world around me, and I felt a lot of helplessness. And suddenly, by starting doing good and focusing on others and really committing to do something good for other people and my community, I was able to become more hopeful. And then that spiral was ignited for me as well. So, and I know that if we ask here, everyone has a story to tell where their mission in life or their purpose in life, those small purposes and those small missions are ignited sometimes by one's own despair. So there is hope for everyone here in this room.
Thank you for
Gracias, Arlene.
Thank you for being vulnerable in this way, Arlene, and truthful about what made life difficult, but also hopeful for you.
Tenemos tiempo para una pregunta más. We have time maybe for one more question. ¿Quién quiere preguntarle algo a María? Levanten la mano. People are writing thank you, or that you give them hope, that they identify with what you shared, Arlene, that
Yeah.
positive psychology made a difference for them. So do we have?
I thought maybe I could end with
Sure.
another realization that happened when I was putting the book together. And I didn't realize this. It was a number of people who've read the book have sent this information back to me, that even though I do talk about Michelangelo in one chapter, and I talk about extraordinary people in it, and I talk about a world famous activist from Africa, Dr. Tarai Trent, right? There are some of those iconic examples. Many of the moments that I bring to bear are very ordinary and simple moments. They are the kindness of someone baking me a butter cake after my brother died, or the moments of a shared coffee in Italy with a stranger. There is one particular story that is deep, deep in my heart, which is I was watching a YouTube video. So I actively look, by the way, when I do Google searches, I look for stories of generosity. Like I've done that since 2001, since we had the towers fall here, 9/11, right? Since we had a terrorist attack on our soil. Since then, I do not watch the news at night. I look for good, positive stories. So that was a choice, a practice choice I made. And one day when I was writing the book, I saw this very ordinary story of a young woman working in an animal preserve in Africa, trying to teach a baby hippo how to be a baby hippo when he was only surrounded by rhinoceros.
Mhm.
Rhinoceros and hippos have very different needs. You know, like the hippo, their skin needs to be in water all day long. But rhinoceros, never in the water. They're always on land. But the baby hippo didn't have any other hippos to play with or to learn from. So his skin kept getting burnt because he just wanted to be with his rhino friends. Well, every day this young woman had to try to train this hippo to be a hippo, despite the fact that the only people around were rhinoceroses. And so I looked up, how much food do you give a hippo? How many piles of hippo poo-poo do you have to clean up? What do you do when the hippo weighs hundreds of pounds and you weigh less than 100, right? And I was filled with this deep appreciation for this woman who probably will never earn enough money to own a home in America, for example. She will probably never have enough money because these jobs are not paid well to be able to fly to see the various beautiful places in our world, or to be in the presence of stunning art. And every day, she cleans the hippo pen and she waters him down and she tries to teach him to be a hippo. That kind of daily goodness. I'm having tears in my eyes, even just remembering the story. That kind of daily goodness kept me alive and continues to keep me alive. It continues to give us a reason to get out of bed and show up and be our own version of our own goodness. I see the question. I hope one day to have it translated into Spanish. That is absolutely a hope. Right now, it's available through Amazon in book print form, but also the e-readers. And yes, it would be a dream to have it translated into Spanish.
All right. Okay. So, Arlene, do you want to say goodbye?
Yes, well, Margarita, please say some closing remarks and then I can go after you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I feel that when Maria said so beautiful that I wished maybe we could stop right there with that inspiring phrase. But I want to say thank you all so much. Thank you. We had 100 people with us. Muchas gracias a cada uno de ustedes. Thanks to each and every one of you. Thank you, Arlene. And Maria, it's always a pleasure and it's always inspiring to hear you. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your knowledge with us.
Can I just say that Yvonne, for the translation behind the scenes, Margarita and Arlene, their generosity is limitless. They were so open-hearted when I first suggested that we do this together, to offer this to the community in Mexico and also in Latin America. And every time I have been with you in some form or another, I have felt hope because of your warmth, your willingness to be present and participate, your kindness to each other, your wise questions. You are a sustaining positive force.
Thank you.
So please, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Maria. It's such a wonderful pleasure, an honor. I also have the book here. Oh, you cannot see it, but I have it here with me. And I want to thank everyone for joining as well. And I wanted, because I saw some of the questions that people were asking, and I wanted to end with a question that you wrote on page 56, and it says, what if the universe actually needed you exactly as you are?
Mm-hmm.
What if the universe actually needed you exactly as you are?
Yes.
Thank you again so much for everything. It was beautiful. And please join the Positive Psychology Society and the Hope Circuit community. Take care, everyone, and thank you so much. Muchas gracias por todo.
Hasta luego, gracias.
Hasta luego, gracias.